Good morning, James Chapman.
Morning.
How are you doing today?
Good. Sorry, I was distracted. I was responding to text messages while we're trying to start this important podcast.
Unbelievable, James.
I know. Please forgive me.
I shall. I may not or may use my spear on your ass.
It'd be tough for you to do through Zoom. Be really tough for you to do.
That's what they all think until it happens.
Yeah. Like, what are you getting ready for, the zombie apocalypse?
It's undetermined at the moment what I'm doing.
Undetermined.
Yeah. But we will set that over there. We will continue.
So imagine a time. So you're feeling that thing. You're holding that thing. Imagine a time when men would line up on a line in a field with those in their hand and run across it at other people coming at them with the same thing to literally try to bludgeon and stab each other to death.
Yeah. So we were actually having this conversation the other day. Dude, I think I would prefer like a sledgehammer this size. Like if I was taking, if it was, apocalypse times and I had to do work, I think I would want a sledgehammer than the spear.
So, man, but the problem would be is just it would be
a lighter sledgehammer, not so heavy.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, your speed with it.
Yeah, not so heavy.
I mean, your veins would be pumping. Like, I just can't even imagine being in the mix of that.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched Game of Thrones?
No.
Okay. So towards the end of this show, there's an episode called Battle of the Bastards. Okay. And to me, like, it almost gives me anxiety to watch that episode because, and the reason this is on my mind is I watched the show originally when it came out. Recently, Danny and I, we were like, man, we need something to watch. So we went back through and watched the whole show all the way through over like the past 2 months. And man, we got to that and in like that episode, I was like, oh my God, this is like the best episode of the show. And the reason being is them fighting in that field, it seems so realistic to me. And one of the things that truly just make it so realistic is like, it's not some beautiful fight scene where you got like a whole crowd of guys running at each other and then they're all of a sudden spread out. They're like doing this fancy sword fighting. Nah, man, like horses are running into men and just plowing them over. And then the piece that seems very realistic to me as they get pushed back and circled around, the men start trampling each other. And like, then the dead are falling on Jon Snow, man. And he's just like gasping for air and he's trapped. He can't get out. And like these dead men and people just keep just walking over top of him. And when he finally gets enough to get out, like he's like pushing as hard as he can, man, it's, if you have any sense of being like claustrophobic, like don't watch that episode. It's insane. And it just makes me think like how probably realistic that could have been in a time.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Dude, there's a whole...
I mean, you imagine swinging an axe or a sword, how quick you would tire out.
Mm-hmm.
But there is just, the moment you gas out, you're a dead man.
Yeah.
You're dead because somebody's going to strike you. So, I mean, I just can't even imagine the exhaustion after it. Being in a couple of firefights in Afghanistan, your adrenaline, you would have this massive adrenaline dump and then you would just be exhausted. Yeah. I mean, just, it would absolutely, like when it was over, it would just pull every bit of energy out of your body.
Tim Kennedy says something about that. And he basically said the exact same thing. He's like, you have the adrenaline dump and you're just like, you're wired, you're going like this, you're in. And then he said the moment that it goes away, you're just gassed. completely just gassed. Dude,
Now, I never witnessed this, but I heard it was common, especially for like tier one guys, like your SF guys and stuff. They would go in and maybe like clear a house or something, or clear a compound, or be in a very, very close quarter intense firefight. They were so jacked up and so much adrenaline pumping through their body when they would stop. They would have been shot and not even know it. And like the muscles and everything were so tense when they would stop and relax, then they would start gushing blood.
so
Like,
like for a fact, like during the old times, like that shit would probably happen, dude. You'd look around and be like, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good," and then
yeah,
just pure.
like you didn't even realize it, I mean, that's mind blowing. It just goes to show you how amazing your body and your mind is built to withstand.
So I think there are some people who do have that, right? They have that normalcy of like old time, like just human body, just purity. And then you also have like some people who just don't have it. Like you have like going back, like some people get into like the smallest car crash and they pass. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have people who live through like a ridiculous car crash and they survive.
Yeah.
Like I think there's something to it. Some people have it.
But like, so getting to see some different guys, like especially like where I was at in Afghanistan, I was just a regular old Joe, proud of it, but I was just a regular old Joe. And man, you would see see some of those badass units and stuff. A lot of those guys looked very, very normal. They were normal looking dudes.
Yeah.
Um, not all of them were the um they all didn't look like the Tim Kennedys and freaking, like you look at Jocko and you're like, oh, that's a freaking SEAL, man. But you know what I mean? I mean, he's just a freaking hell of a specimen of a human. You know what I'm saying? Like most of those guys are regular looking dudes. I met a dude that was Delta Force here recently, and man, he looked like he should have been coaching the freaking soccer team.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just
Yeah.
a normal looking dude. And he did like 10 years in Delta. Those guys are insane, man. And you know, he just looked like a freaking soccer dad.
Yeah. But
It,
that's what's crazy is like you have that translates to so many different things. So
it,
many things because some of the people that you meet, you're like it's a normal cat, and then
yeah,
behind the scenes, back in the good days or whatever,
yeah.
you're
But
completely
I mean,
different
I think a lot of it's built around physical, right? Like when we see it, it's like how much physically they can take. I think the difference maker is
mentally.
is mentally. If you've never read it, I highly suggest Lone Survivor Operation, the story of Operation Red Wing, the actual book,
Yeah.
not the movie. The movie's fantastic. They did a great job on the movie, but the book is awesome. It takes you go like Marcus Luttrell from being a kid up to like prepping for going into the Navy and then SEAL training. Like it gives a lot more of his story. And uh, he he talks about in one part of that book, just kind of summarizing, they're talking about they're all just beat and broke down and stuff. And one of the guys in Buds leaves his room and he forgot to lock something or do something. So one of the instructors went in there and just trashed the dude's room, like trashed it. And come back from training all day, and the guy comes back to that. And like it just like broke the dude. So Luttrell's talking about that. And he said after it was all done, it stuck with him. And he asked the instructor, they became friends. He asked the instructor, why did you do that? And he just said, the body can damn near take everything. It's the mind that's weak.
Yeah.
And he did it just for that purpose, just to see if he could break that dude mentally. That
Yeah.
was the only reason.
So it's funny you bring up Marcus Luttrell is when I got into real estate, they were like, there's things that you can do to get like what do they call them? Like specific like dedications, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to do, because we wanted to do a lot with like the vets, and we wanted to do with like police and the hero, or piece.
Mhm.
Um, he was actually one of the speakers, or a member of, like, there was a couple different guys up there, but they handed out the Lone Survivor book. And so it was like, it was a couple different speakers, but um, they talked about like all these other like cool things about, like, I guess I say cool, like just things that you don't really realize that people go through during that time, that help you kind of be able to understand them in a certain aspect, um, and just understand that you're doing this for a reason, right? You want to help in this specific thing for a reason, right? They ended up actually like giving a house away to a vet that had like just gotten back. Dude, it was awesome.
Wow. That's
Um,
awesome.
but it was one of those things that he handed it, like, we got the book, and I didn't really do anything with it at the time. And then like a week later, I was like, I'm gonna read this book. Absolutely amazing. Like, you just don't realize like what some people actually have to go through to get back and actually make some things happen. Like, that mental fortitude that you've got to develop in those situations, but also in life in general. Like, there's a lot of things that have to be in play. Um, but going back to what you said, like, there's so much to it. The body will fail before the mind will.
I think if the mind's built right, right?
Right, right. If the mind's built right, or you have the contrast of that, where you have
But I
like,
think that's a skill set. Once again, you're just not built that tough. Just like, I mean, yeah, you can go out there and there's specimens that are better built to run 20 miles than others, right? And there's some that may just because of the way who they are, they would never be capable of 20 miles no matter how hard they worked, right? But like, there's still skill set, there's building to that, and it's in with your mind as well. I highly recommend Lone Survivor book. I read it way before the movie ever came out. It was just given to me. I was like, hey, I read this book's freaking awesome, you got to read it. So I started reading through it, man, and I couldn't put that book down. I remember laying in bed, like I would get choked up and like trying to hold back crying reading that book in bed at night so I wouldn't wake up Danielle. Like I was like trying to hold in like I would literally be like, and the damn bed would be shaking. I mean, that's how it's just, I could see it, man, in my head reading through that book. It was unbelievable. Very, very good book. Very good book. But and I think it's also interesting from my understanding. By no means am I an expert, so I would never want to come off as one. A lot of those anything the special forces side, man, yeah, they're like top tier, tip of the spear, all that stuff. But like, they're wonder human beings too, and their tempo now, or has been, especially when the war was winding, like their operational tempo was like incredibly high. The U.S. military has been leaning on them extremely heavily for many years now. I mean, those folks are going like at a very high tempo than I think what they're actually meant to do. Like the amount of deployments they've done, how often they deploy, all those things. They've just put a lot of pressure on that community. And they've put in a lot of hard work for a lot of years now. So impressive people for sure.
yeah. And I think there's a lot that, I don't know. I can only imagine, right? So
Yeah.
it's a whole different, situation.
So let's take it back to practical business sense here, because that's what we're doing. And after we finish this, we're gonna go back to work and try to crank after it, right? Like you I've been in insurance 20 years now. I've owned my own agencies for this will be 12 years in July 1st. there's things that used to piss me off and ruin my day that don't anymore because they're just normal. Like, oh, that stuff that used to ruin my day. Like, I just eat that for breakfast, man. It's normal. Like getting galvanized to those things and getting better. So you should be growing in that. If you have the same little small thing piss you off today that pissed you off 5 years from now, like, are you growing? Are you getting any better? Are you maturing in what you're doing? You probably really need to look at that. Maybe you should be striving for some bigger problems so these small problems don't seem as much.
Yeah, and there's something to that a lot of people don't speak about is um, when you first get into business, or you first get into the career that you want to get into, it's one of those things that a lot of people don't expect to be nervous. They don't expect to be scared. They don't expect to have those new beginning feelings, right? And then you're getting ready to go to a listing appointment. And on the way to that listing appointment, your hands are shaking, right? You're nervous. You don't want to mess up. You don't, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a listing appointment. But you start by doing and overcoming that first initial, nervousness and all of the things that are happening. You
Yeah.
get over it, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And it's a consistent thing that you have to go through, right? And the moment that you get to that point that you don't feel the nerves anymore, you've now hardened yourself, you've gotten the scar tissue built up to where you don't feel that, right? Something I want to say about that is it's important to feel those things. It's important to be in that moment. It's important to allow your body to feel that and understand that there's a point that is going to come that you will not feel that anymore. And you will have to look back and say, man, I don't get nervous anymore. I don't get scared anymore. I don't have the what ifs anymore about this scenario. And you're going to possibly miss that nostalgia that comes along with that, because that means that you're further down the road, right?
Yeah.
And it's important not to miss that.
So to that, that's a really great point. So you go from A to B. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes you confident, makes you confident, right?
Right.
So now that's probably where a lot of us end, though. Correct? You go from, oh man, Addison and I are starting a podcast. I'm nervous. I'm a little anxious, right?
Yeah.
We do 10 episodes and I'm anxious through every single one of them. I'm stuttering over my words. I keep going back. And then somewhere around 11 or 12, I start getting comfortable. By 15, I'm good. By 232, I don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. So I went from A to B. Am I working to get to C? Like, there's more than just getting comfortable. Now, how do you take that and go, man, I'm going to get really fucking good at this. Yeah. I'm going to think through. I'm going to continue to challenge, because when we first did it, right? Or I made that first sales pitch or whatever, right? Had that first company meeting. I triple check myself, right? All these things. What am I doing now? I don't know if I am. I'm probably not. What am I triple checking now? What am I working on to get better? What if I had kept that same level of intensity and stepped it up? How good would I have been?
Yeah.
Would I be good enough to stand on stage and talk to someone? Right? Would I be good enough to not only stand on stage and talk to people, but charge them for me to stand on stage and talk to them?
And so that's another good point, is that A to B can be scary, it can be tough, and you can get lost in the sauce there. B to C, you've got to do the exact same things. Maybe not the exact same things, but you still have to be striving to be better so that you can get from B to C, just like you got to A to B, right? Getting over those first initial humps, the nervousness and all that stuff, you should still continuously be doing that on different things. There should still be nervousness and curiosity and drive behind that next step. because
Yep.
it's easy to get complacent now that you're good at what you've been doing. But
Mm-hmm.
you now have to step into that next field, but it's up to you to figure out what that next field is.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. That can be hard, right? Is it?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily hard. It just takes you, because it wasn't hard to do the first part, right? It just had your attention.
Yeah.
I think it's not hard. You just got to keep your attention on it, right? Like you got to keep your attention on it.
Yeah.
So I can already notice what have I've told you I'm doing this new checklist thing for what? It's probably been about a month, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
All right. I'm getting really comfortable with it. I'm comfortable. I'm feeling good. So I noticed this week though, I've gotten comfortable, which has made me slack in the sense of I hadn't been like thinking about it every second, making sure I'm on point. So like, oh, I'm getting cozy. I got cozy. And then Monday, for example, actually when Monday, it was Friday. Friday got behind on it. I said, okay, well, like I got it here. I'll catch up Monday. Monday was behind again.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, well, I'll just clear this and then I'll be good. I can start kind of fresh, right? Forget. No, fuck you. You don't get to do that.
Yeah.
You got to now pay the price. So
Yes,
I paid
sir.
the price. So it's like, okay, I got to stay in tune. I can't just push this one aside and say, oh, I got it tomorrow. No, bullshit. You don't have it tomorrow because you don't have it today. So you got to get today and yesterday fixed before you can even think about tomorrow.
And that's a good point. That's a good point because that allowed you to have that mental check of like, we call it the bitch on the shoulder, right? Like whatever. Like you've got this little thing that says like, okay, push it, push it, push it.
Yep.
And if you listen to the procrastination, if you listen to the I've got other things that I need to take care of. If you listen to that and you don't complete the things that you put on your list, you will continuously be behind.
Yep.
And maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, you will know that you are behind. And
Yep.
at some point, it will become overwhelming that you fall back.
Yep.
And then you quit, and then you stop doing the tracking. You stop doing the things because it has become, in a lack of words, overwhelming.
Yep. Hey, and it's easy to do that. People who are good at it still have to fight that to get it done, right? Yeah. Like you got to, but it's worth it. You have to, no matter what, you got to keep looking at, the pain or the pleasure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pain sucks of going, okay, well, I'm going to do this either way, even though I don't want to do it. But what's the pleasure that comes off of that? The discipline that gives the freedom, right? The pleasure of going, screw it, I'll do it tomorrow, creates a pain of now it's been 3 weeks and you haven't done any of it and you're all jacked up. And now you're like, oh, reality check. Oh, yeah, I'll get it all fixed up just to recycle it again.
Yeah.
That's the definition of doing the same thing and expecting to get different results. I mean, that is stupid. Yeah. It's stupid. And you're doing that on the stupidness, like on that it's stupid and like really embrace that shit.
Yeah. And then, it comes down to, you've got to have the checks and balances, right? The moment that you stop because it's not the way that you want it to be or how it needs to be exactly. The goal is not perfection in what you're doing. The goal is consistency, right? The moment you have been consistent in doing the things that you know you're supposed to do are the moments that you make progress, right? Instead of having this up and down roller coaster of going back, I'm going to do it this time, fail. Doing it correct this time, fail. Instead of having that, just consistently just do it. And do it the best of your ability, because your best is not always going to be the top tier every single day, right? Yeah. We've talked about that. There's some day where your best is at 100 and there's some day that your best is at 85. And then you've got to just understand, as long as I'm consistently doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, there is rewards at the end of this game.
Yeah, and that's the mistake, man. That's the mistake. You saying that, the mistake is thinking, well, I'm just not hot today. Okay, you're not hot. But do not think, or I'll say do not think. It is a complete waste. It's a complete waste when you do have that day where you are fired up, you're ready to go, you're dialed in, you're laser focused, all that bullshit. But but you have not been consistent. So it's a waste of it, because basically you spend that day trying to catch up and then you feel good about it. When honestly, if you would have just put in the work daily, if it was your 50% or your 70%, that day where it's meant to be the 100, you want to really be 100, do the steps every day. So when you come in, is that day that's meant to be the 100, all the stars align, every client answers the phone, every conversation is great. You are absolutely on point, not going, oh, well, I better stop. I got to go clean up all the shit I'm behind. Oh, this day I'm spending apologizing to everyone because I didn't get them what they were supposed to get when it was supposed to be there. That's a waste of a 100 day is what it is.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. So
just having this conversation.
What can you apply? I want you to take this and see what you can apply and pick one thing, just one thing. If you can't pick one thing from this and go, okay, that makes sense. Here's one thing where I'm not consistent and I tell myself I'm going to be consistent every other week. I have a come to Jesus meeting with myself and say, I'm going to get consistent on this. And then you do it for 2 weeks and then you're back to being inconsistent. Pick one thing and look yourself in the mirror and say, this is it. Today's the line. I'm going to stick to it. And then if you think about that, imagine what Addison said, the little bitch on your shoulder, right? But it's going to be Addison and I on your shoulder going, you said you're going to do this. You're full of it. It's what it is. I want you to imagine that. Come back and listen to this episode, whatever you got to do, but like pick one thing. You don't need to change 10 things. You won't stick with 10 things. Pick one thing. One. If you can't pick one, then you're full of it as well. Mark my words. You'll never get where you want to go. Period. Live with the decision. Honestly, I don't care which one you do, but just know you're the one who's got to live with the decision. So choose what it's going to be.
That's it. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for participating in the things that we have going on. And just genuinely, I can't say it enough. Thank you for the support and the growth that we have been able to do up to this point, and many more things to do going forward. I've got a goal in my mind that we hit a certain number. I know James is about the same, and we need to do a live event at some point, dude.
Ooh,
that would, yeah, dude.
That makes me nervous.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Doing like a live event. Carly and I went up to Boston last weekend and just got to experience the city, do the whole thing. But one of the podcasts she listens to had a live event situated. And I'm going to tell this story fairly quickly and so we can get on. But we went up there, went to the live event. Dude, it was super cool. It was one of the podcasts that she listens to, whatever. And it was a really cool experience. I got to, be in the audience, see them doing their thing up on the stage. 3,500 people came to listen to their live event. Dude, it was so cool. It was so cool. Because all I could think about was like at one moment, they probably had only 1,000 people listening.
Shit. Or less, right?
Or less. And then they've blown it up to this thing where they had people pay to go to an event and experience their live event. And it was just so cool because I was like, man, I wanted to just tell them like, I'm proud of you guys for just doing this. Right. And then there was a moment I did go up on stage, by the way. We'll talk more about that later. But as far as everything goes, dude, it was super cool. It was super cool. And I got a little taste and I was like, this is where we're headed, bro. That would be absolutely amazing. Like the smile on your face right now, that says enough to me. So guys, check out our sponsors, Jocko Fuel, Origin USA. They are an awesome group of guys, awesome group of folks, awesome companies. And when you get there, you can go to the website. When you get to checkout, put in the code GRIND10, GRIND10, and get yourself 10% off on all the goodies. With that being said,
grinder out.